Hi, it's Billy from Sweetie Darling, and today I'm going to show you how to use the ProFroster on a square cake. So if you follow me, you'll know that I'm quite the fan of the ProFroster. I first did a video showing how to use it on a buttercream cake, and then I got a load of requests asking how it was on ganache, so I did a video for that. And after I did those two, I got a load of requests asking how it worked on square cake. So this week I have made a square cake and used the ProFroster to show you how it works with that. Now again, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know I'm not normally a ganache user. A square cake is one of the only times I will use ganache. Now typically during the week when I recorded this, my order hadn't yet arrived, so I had no cream and I couldn't make ganache. So this is a square cake with buttercream, which is like the worst way to do a square cake, and therefore the ultimate test for the ProFroster. So I'm using a 6-inch square cake with a 6-inch square board underneath it. I've laid it together with buttercream in between the layers, and then I've added a buttercream crumb coat to it. Now this crumb coat is just to contain the crumbs against the cake and to give it a bit of a foundation before I start adding more buttercream. Once the crumb coat's on, I put it in the freezer until the buttercream is really nice and hard, and that normally takes about 15 to 20 minutes. If you're using ganache, this will be much quicker. Once that crumb coat is chilled, I bring it back out the freezer, and I'm really generous with the buttercream that I add. I want a nice thick layer on there, so when I scrape it off, it scrapes pretty much most of it off, but it leaves a fairly even finish around the outside of it. So I spread a lot of buttercream on, all around the sides and all over the top of the cake. I then set my ProFroster to the right height, so that's just a tiny bit higher than the actual cake, and line it up against the baseboard at the bottom. I can then scrape the excess buttercream away, and between each scrape I'm cleaning off my ProFroster so I don't get a big build up. Now you can see pretty much immediately how much it's sharpening the edge at the top, and I just continue this the whole way around the cake, and you can see it crisping everything up. Now this is what I absolutely love about the ProFroster, is it does all the hard work for you. Now of course with a round cake you only have that top edge to contend with. On a square cake you have the top edge, and you also have the sides of the cake as well. Now to try and get those as sharp as possible, I started almost a bit before each side and I finished a bit after each side. So I didn't scrape starting at the corner and finishing at the corner, because otherwise you end up still with a build up of buttercream. So I had to start a bit before, so I really swept everything away. Now like there is that angle on the top of the ProFroster which sorts out the very top edges, there isn't anything to actually do that on the side corners. So it's just a case of manoeuvring the ProFroster as best you can to leave yourself with as sharp an edge as you can, but there is a way to neaten it up, so I'll show you that. So once you've got that first coat done and scraped away, I put that back in the freezer and let that chill for another 15 minutes or so until it's all nice and hard, and then I'll bring the cake back out and I'll repeat the process just to sharpen everything up a bit more and to add a bit of extra buttercream in case it's a bit thin. I normally add 2 coats of buttercream after the crumb coat anyway. Now this coat I've decided is going to be my last coat, so I spread it on, scrape it off. Again you can see the top edges are becoming really nice and sharp here. The ProFroster has done all my foundation work for me, and the other thing I absolutely love about it is when I started this, my cake wasn't completely level, so I had one side that was slightly lower down, because actually what I've done here is got a 12-inch square cake and cut it into 4 and just layered them up on top of each other and tried to level out with buttercream on the way up, and didn't do a very good job. So my whole cake wasn't particularly level. Because the ProFroster is set at the exact same height every side that you scrape it round, it has meant my cake now has been made at the same height with the buttercream, and the ProFroster, the fact that it's leveled the buttercream up to the same height the whole way around. So now it looks like a really even, level, flat square cake, whereas underneath it actually isn't. So now it's just the side edges and the corners that I need to think about neatening up. So for that I'm just getting a bit of buttercream on my palette knife and smoothing over each corner to sharpen out. So I normally spread up the corner and then I spread back in towards the side of the cake tier, so that there's any excess, it gets spread towards the middle of the tier and blended out. I do that around all 4 sides, all 4 edges of the sides, and then move to the top corners just to make sure I'm happy with those. Now if you're like, my buttercream was so cold here, and I've said before in my buttercream tutorial video for the ProFroster on a round cake, buttercream likes to stick to buttercream and it can tear and feather in a way that ganache doesn't. So if you have any rough edges, if you were covering your cake in fondant, this wouldn't matter. It's not going to show at at all, but if you want to leave it as buttercream, or if you just want to make sure you have a pristine cake before you put fondant on it, the best way to smooth everything out is to boil some water, pour it into a cup and leave your palette knife in it so it's nice and hot, and then use that and spread over any feathery edges, and this will melt just the surface of the buttercream so it smooths everything out to a really nice flat finish. And that is quite a handy tip. This is literally the quickest I have ever buttercreamed a square cake and actually been happy with the finish of it. Normally when I buttercream a square cake, I do it freehand and I end up with the sides, they're not completely straight, they're never completely flat, upways or lengthways, like from front to back. The corners are never spot on and the top edges definitely never spot on. So this again has changed the game for me in terms of crumb coating my cakes to a nice finish. Thank you for asking me to do a square cake because I wouldn't have thought of it by myself. So the answer to the question, does the ProFroster work on square cakes? Yes, it absolutely does. It will work exactly the same as it does on round cakes at sharpening those top edges. Just the side corners you will need to finish off with a palette knife, but I think that's a pretty fair trade-off for how much it helps with the rest of it. As always, I will put links underneath. I'll put a link to my video showing how to buttercream a round cake, a link for how to ganache a round cake with the ProFroster, and links for where to buy the ProFroster if you are in the States or if you are in the UK. In the meantime, if you get yourself a ProFroster and you have a go, make sure you take a photo and use the hashtag YesDarling on Instagram so I can see. I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you next week.